A question I see over and over is, how do I learn about Celtic paganism? And my answer is usually, can I have an easier question? Seriously though, my answer is usually, can you be more specific? What do you mean by Celtic, and what do you want to learn? Because what you mean by Celtic paganism and what I mean might be totally different things. Celtic paganism isn't an organized religion. It's just an umbrella term. If you want to find out about an organized, long-established religion or join one, there are clear paths to follow. The revival of Celtic paganism isn't at that stage. It's just a bunch of people who are sort of headed in the same general direction, but kind of doing their own thing too. It's a bit like the old story of the blind men and the elephant. One felt the leg and thought the elephant was like a tree, and another felt the trunk and thought the elephant was like a snake, and so on. So if you just ask how to learn about Celtic paganism, you will often get answers specific to one person's ideas. But you won't get the big picture. My personal version looks something like this, for example. Just the word Celtic can cause problems when different people think it means different things. The narrow academic definition is that it either refers to the Celts of ancient Gaul, or that it refers to a group of languages that include the language of ancient Gaul and modern languages like Welsh and Irish. In everyday conversation, we might use Celtic to describe people or countries which spoke a Celtic language in recent history, and maybe even to describe their cultures. But as we move in that direction, things get fuzzier and fuzzier, and we know what's coming. It's the pink elephant of Celtic paganism, where anything goes because somebody says so. People start gathering up any old eclectic stuff and calling it Celtic, because they don't realize that it might actually offend people who are from Celtic-speaking cultures. And that's, no, not always cultural appropriation, so much as cultural misrepresentation. Cultural appropriation is stealing another culture's stuff and acting like it's yours to use. Cultural misrepresentation is saying that the Celts built Stonehenge or that Danu was an Irish potato goddess. If you want to take up spiritual or religious practices that are rooted primarily in Celtic culture, past or present, and call it Celtic paganism, that's okay, as long as you do it respectfully. And that applies no matter where you live or what your DNA looks like. Just don't pretend to be something you're not, or that something's Celtic if it's not. It's one thing to be accidentally wrong sometimes, but to not caring whether you are representing a culture accurately isn't good. Well, historically the Druids were Celtic, that's for sure. But they were suppressed over the centuries by Romans, and Christians, and Saxons, and the last of their legacy mostly died out by the Middle Ages at the latest. The pagans you meet today who call themselves Druids are just reviving certain aspects of what they think the Druids of the past did. And that's been going on for over 100 years. Some of these revival Druids, or neo-Druids, are Celtic pagans, and some others definitely aren't. They might be universalists, or eclectics, or more of a cultural organization. Celtic polytheism means believing in and honoring deities that belong to one or more Celtic cultures. These might be deities of ancient Gaul, or Britain, or of Ireland. You can't get much more Celtic pagan than that. But what you believe, and how you do your honoring, what you hold as sacred and important, and so on, that's still going to vary a lot. People have many different approaches, but it's definitely Celtic paganism. Celtic Reconstructionism is when you try to find out how Celtic people in the past did their religion, and then you try to do the same. Sort of. Like most religions that look strongly to the past, there tend to be degrees of extremism or moderation from one group of Celtic Reconstructionists to another. There is an inherent problem here, which is that we don't know much about the beliefs and practices of ancient Celtic cultural groups. So a lot of reconstruction is guesswork, or it's borrowing from cultures we know more about to fill in the gaps. And then there's the question of which cultural group, in which time period. What the Irish were doing in the 2nd century AD is probably quite different than what the people of Gaul were doing in 500 BC. Not that we're really clear on what either group were doing. However, yes, Celtic Reconstructionism is definitely Celtic paganism. Wicca itself definitely is not Celtic, but there are some groups and individuals who practice Wicca with an exclusively Celtic focus, and some of those are very knowledgeable, so that would be Celtic paganism too. I don't see why not. If you've done your research and feel that your practices are deeply rooted in a Celtic culture, then I guess so. I don't know much about witchcraft, so I'm going to stop before I say something foolish. If you're interested in learning more about Celtic paganism, you need to ask good questions. Figure out what you really want to know. What's drawing you to it in the first place? Do you feel you have a strong link to a particular Celtic-speaking culture or a particular deity? Then try to ask about that. I know a lot of people feel like they need everything, the whole package. What they really want is a Celtic Paganism for Dummies book. I would suggest that you be very wary of how to be a Celtic pagan type books. I don't read those books, but I hear that there are a lot of really bad ones. If you learn some basics first, it will be easier to spot those and maybe even recognize a good one. If you don't know where to start, my advice is to pick something. Pick a deity and ask for information about them, or pick a culture and ask for a good history book about that. Or ask something specific, like how do I make an altar, or how do I make an offering, or something like that. You will still get a variety of answers, some better than others, but I think you will get better answers. You can even try asking a question in the comments here. I'll try to point you in the right direction if I can.